Welcome in, everyone. Christian Jackson here with Roman Tomashoff, who covers Washington for Huskies Wire and Locked on Huskies. Roman, great to have you here.
Christian, it's great to be back. Love being here.
So we were talking before we started recording a little bit about last year, last place in the Big Ten. But, I mean, Danny Sprinkle was killing it at Montana State, 2 straight tournaments, a great year at Utah State, and, eventually – I mean, for him to have come into Washington, thrown together a roster, and then competed in that loaded Big Ten was a lot to ask. But luckily, Absolutely. He got his feet under him for year 2 and has a much, much better looking roster that a lot of people are bullish on, including myself, and I know you are as well. So as I want to get into a lot of these guys one by one, but just kind of overall, kind of tell me about his approach to this offseason and how he was able to get some of these guys, because he brought in some really good names.
So I think the best way to look at it is he just understood what kind of talent it took to play in the Big Ten. I remember it was after, I believe it was the Indiana game in early March. There was a point where after the game, I think they were up 12, 15 points in that game or something, and just let it slip away. Indiana eventually comes back and wins. And Danny told us in the media after the game, he said, I needed to do a better job of putting together this roster. A lot of the guys we have here, to quote him, he said they didn't make basketball the number one thing. And he just said that a lot of the guys on the roster were just unfortunately not Big Ten caliber players. And you go out and you look at what he did in the transfer portal this offseason, he attacked it. He did a really good job building through the high school ranks as well. But you look at some of the high-end guys in this roster, the Desmond Claus, Wesley Yates, getting a guy like Kimari Peterson in the building, just outside of those 3 guys, there are so many that you can go down the list with. But I look at those 3 in particular and say, what this backcourt can turn into, it can be just truly lethal under what he wants to do offensively.
So stylistically at Montana State and Utah State, and I mean, bringing his boy Great Oysterboy with him last year, Danny likes to play bully ball. He wants to post guys up. He wants to be physical. Not huge offensive rebounding numbers, which is something that I think could change this year. That's how he wants to play offensively. And you bring in a lot of guys who I think kind of fit that scheme. Shooting, we'll get to later if that is a concern. But I kind of want to start with Des Claude and Wesley Yates coming over from USC together. Can you tell me about the order of that happened, kind of whose idea it was maybe in their communication in getting there?
Sure.
But also, I love Des Claude. I've loved him since Xavier. Just people, gave him some crap for, not really being a point guard last year, or just the fact that sometimes the shot just isn't there. But his handle and his physicality and his ability to get to free throw line into the rim is really special to me. And then Wesley Yates has pro potential as a 3-level scorer. He is awesome. I'm a big fan of both of them. So just kind of tell me about them coming to Washington, maybe their relationship and what you expect from them this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that Christian, I know you know this, but some people might forget is Wesley started his career at Washington.
Right.
And his cousin Quincy Pondexter is Husky legend, was on the USC staff with him there after, being with Mike Hopkins at UW, was canned there when that whole staff just kind of
shout out Quincy Pondexter. I did not know that.
Pondexter, one of my favorite players to watch of all time. And so Wesley and Quincy were a package deal going down to USC. And then it felt like that was the case coming back as well, where one thing that Wesley told us when we got a chance to speak to him over the summer was he called it unfinished business coming back to Washington, that he loved it here, that he wanted to be here, but the way his injury worked out and everything, and obviously with the staff changing, it was hard for him to stay here. And the fact that both of them get to team up again at Washington with Quincy Pondexter being back on the coaching staff as well is a lot of fun. So he was the first domino to fall in that regard. And then Desmond Claude was UW's final transfer portal acquisition. It was one of those things where we kind of went through this offseason knowing, okay, you need to get a couple guys here, a couple guys there. And the one thing that stood out throughout this entire process, and there are so many names, like Cedric Coward is the one who stands out the top of my head, of Washington wanted to go out and get somebody who can kind of play the 3 and be that wing, where I know Desmond Claude played a lot of point guard at USC, but they wanted to play a lot more off ball this year with a couple of guys who we'll get to later on that are going to just assume that just on ball sort of role. And having a guy like that who can play the wing, that can defend at a high level, can get to the basket with ease. And as you said, Christian, play just such a physical brand of basketball at the same time. Having a guy like that was just the perfect way to round out this roster.
Kamari Peterson from East Tennessee State, a really good guard in the SoCon, 25-4, 2 steals a game on 42% 3-point shooting on 6 attempts per game. I'm really excited about him. Sometimes these mid-major guards that are super productive, when they make the jump to a power conference school, sometimes it doesn't really work out, but then there's other guys where it absolutely works out. It's a home run. And Peterson's efficiency from deep, in addition with that productivity and 2 steals per game has me pretty bullish on him. So tell me what you're expecting from him. Is he going to start at the 1, and is he a leader on this team? He's one of a few older guys.
Yeah, that's kind of my expectation here, is because he was top 20 in 3-point shooting percentage last season in the NCAA as well. So he's someone who he shared with us over the summer that he is a pretty quiet guy and needed to find his voice, and learning from Danny Sprinkle all summer has certainly helped him do that. And he is someone I do expect to step up and be a leader on this team. And one thing that Danny told us a lot throughout last season was that his roster didn't have a true end of clock sort of guy. And he referenced a stat that from the top of the key, late in the shot clock, end of game scenarios, Kimari Peterson was shooting 62% from, I think it was from the wing and then the top of the key in some of those scenarios. So somebody who is truly efficient in those late game just situations is someone that I think that's going to be one of his big roles on this team. But as a passer, as a shooter, he's certainly going to help space the floor in ways that we didn't see last year with, like, DJ Davis was really hot and cold during his 1 year with Washington. Tyree Iheanacho and Luis Courtwright never really got a chance to prove themselves as shooters in this offense. And Danny's going to want to play up tempo, and having a guy like that who can, run the break, but then also sometimes just kind of act as the trailer because he is such a threat from deep is a really exciting just addition to this offense, whether he does play the 1 or play the 2 a little bit, because there are a couple other guys who, like Zoom Diallo, JJ Mandequit, who can also play as ball handlers. And the way that this could shape up in the backcourt is really interesting to me.
Talk about guys being able to handle that grenade at the end of the shot clock. Like,
yeah,
Kimari, Wesley Yates, and Des Claude with 7 seconds left, like, give them the rocket and let
Absolutely.
them go. So, I mean, I'm just enticed by a lot of this talent. I want to talk about Hans Steinbach from Germany. Was one of the best players of the FIBA U19s this summer, 6'11", averaged like 17 and 13, I think, in that tournament.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me, what are your expectations for him making the jump to college basketball? And yeah, I just want to hear about this kid.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to phrase it, because it's so clear how excited everyone around the program is for Hannes, where when he came over, like at the end of the summer, it was someone who this coaching staff, first of all, shout out to this coaching staff, Andy Hill, especially, doing a tremendous job getting in on him early, scouting him very, very early on in the process, getting a signature when they did, because it was something that Danny shared with us at a couple different points in time, that as this recruiting process went on, even after he signed, there were some of the elite of the elite programs in the country that were trying to get him to change. It just changes commitment, flip, whatever you want to say. And he held solid the entire time. He was committed to Washington, loved the way that he developed a relationship with the coaching staff. And you could say anything you want about him off the court. Really, really great kid. It's tremendous to just get this opportunity to get to know him. And then you look at him on the court. Danny Sprinkle compared him to Dennis Rodman as a rebounder. It's just one of those things where he has that sense of wherever the ball is, he's just always going to be there and get to it. And there's a tremendous backstory where his dad was a pro player in the Bundesliga for a long time. By the way, one thing that I'm really intrigued by is you go look at some of his stats with Wolfsburg last year in the Bundesliga playoffs. He averaged a double-double in those, I want to say it was 10 games that he played. And this is, again, just against such a high level of competition against guys much older than him. And that all is really exciting to think about, because I don't know if Hannes is going to start or come off the bench right now because of somebody like Jacob Ognisevich, who I think is a really fun weapon and just a very versatile piece for what Danny Sprinkle's both offense and defense can do, really. But having a guy like that who has just such a tremendous ceiling with everything he brings to the table, I think he's the biggest X factor on this team.
Let's talk about Jacob. Tell me how to say his last name. Ognisevich.
I've been saying Ognisevich. I've seen both, and that's the one that we've been going with.
So starts at Valpo, goes to Lipscomb. Yeah. Lipscomb was a really good team last year, lost in the first round of the tournament, but they're really well coached offensively, and they always run beautiful stuff. And he's the type of skilled kind of big that they like to have at 6'8", averaged 20 and 8, shot 40% from deep. Tell me about the jump up from the A-Sun to the Big Ten, if he's expected to, be able to handle that physically, or if he's kind of like a different look as more of a finesse big. What are expectations for him? Yeah,
absolutely. I love what he brings as a shooter. A-Sun Player of the Year last season as well. So somebody who you just rattled off the numbers, Christian. 20-8, 40% from deep. Having that in your bag is tremendous. But then one thing where I think I'm not necessarily too concerned about him handling the physicality of the Big Ten is you go look at the numbers that he posted against Power 4 teams last year. He was averaging 16 points per game when he went against some of those higher levels of competition. I think he had 16 or 18, somewhere in that ballpark against Kentucky at some point last year. So his numbers against the high-end opponents that he had are great. And I think that's one of the things that when I look at what he brings to the table and what makes it such a just confusing conversation really around Hannes Steinbach in particular is you have a veteran guy who brings so much. And Danny has time and again praised his intelligence just when it comes to Jacob as a leader on the basketball court and what he can do in terms of passing, finding open guys. And of course, you can't leave him unguarded from beyond the 3-point line too. And having, in my opinion right now, I think he's going to start at the 4. 3 guys in your starting lineup that shot over 40% from deep last year. We are going to see a lot more up tempo from this UW team this year. And having guys like that can space the floor and do so many different things for you offensively is really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's sneaky how much shooting. I knew Wesley Yates was making them, but I didn't realize he was 44%. Last year, and that is really enticing when you look at the mix of physicality and shooting. I want to talk about the 2 returners. Is Zoom Diallo, but then is Frank healthy and eligible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell me expectations for them, and how happy was Danny to be able to have even a little bit of continuity on this team?
Do you want me to start with Frank?
Yeah, start with Frank.
Sure, absolutely, because he is one of my favorite players that I've ever seen come through UW. Just it's unfortunate that he hasn't been able to be on the court a little bit more consistently, but the energy, the passion, everything he brings, especially on the defensive end of the floor, is exactly what this team needs. I feel like we're going to see more 4 out, 1 in from this UW offense this season. And having a guy like that where he's averaged 6, 8, somewhere in that ballpark points per game in his career. It's not that he's, a big time offensive threat, but whenever the ball is in his hands, he does command so much attention. And he's done a really good job of passing and distributing and finding the open guys, doing all that sort of stuff. And he's dropped 10, 15 pounds, I think. He's the healthiest he's ever been from everything that's coming out of the program in terms of where his knee is at right now. And having a 6th-year veteran kind of guy like that to lead your team and lead your defense is so vital. And having a guy like that who changes so many shots on the interior, it can't be overstated what kind of presence he brings in the paint for anybody who hasn't gotten a chance to watch him. And then talking about Zoom Diallo, this is a guy who, no matter what his role is, starting, coming off the bench, I think that we're going to see a very different version of him last year, where I was so impressed with what he brought as a freshman, being able to handle the physicality of the conference and going downhill and some of the things he was able to do in that regard. And when we got a chance to speak with him earlier this summer, the number one thing that he emphasized was finding ways to expand his game. And that's developing a 3-point shot, playing more off ball. So I feel like we're still going to see him with the ball in his hands a lot this season. But if he's not necessarily one of the primary ball handlers on this team, I wouldn't be surprised. But having a guy like that, to answer your question, Christian, about what it's like to, and from Danny's perspective, especially having both those guys back in the mix, it's really nice where you can have some kind of continuity. And for somebody like Zoom, a former really highly rated recruit coming out of nearby Tacoma, having a dude like that who's so passionate about the program and has such great ties to so many of these alumni from the area and just the rich basketball history that Seattle has, having a guy like that who really understands that is extremely important.
Analytically, he had the best on-off splits on the team last year, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. As a freshman, just playing on a team that was struggling, but he's the type of guy that I feel like kind of shifting to a reserve role. It's like that really packing a punch off the bench is a guy who in transition can kill you, who, defensively is bringing it. And then if that 3-point shot comes along, then watch out. That's a really good player. I want to talk about JJ Mandequit, the 4-star freshman coming in. Heard he's a really pure point guard, and that gives you an interesting look to go to off the bench. Can you tell me about JJ?
Absolutely. And this is just kind of the reason I've been hinting at, I don't know if this guy's going to play on ball. I don't know if that guy's going to play on ball. It's because of JJ Mandequit. And this is someone who's done a tremendous job with Team USA. Obviously, another FIBA U19 standout, winning the gold medal with them over there. He's someone who, no matter who we've talked to around the program, and we've gotten a couple of media availability sessions this summer, from freshmen to seniors, every single person, when asked about JJ Mandequit, has said something along the lines of, yeah, that's the best like true point guard I've ever been around. And he's someone who can shoot a little bit, who does have just some of those other intangibles that you look for. But it was very clear that when, you go and you look at who Danny prioritized on the recruiting trail on the high school side of things in this last class, JJ was the number one player on his list, no matter where he was going to be. It was the same thing at Utah State. Now, obviously here at Washington, he has an opportunity to play in the Big Ten, which is great. But this is somebody who is going to run his offense really, really efficiently. And when you go back and you look at what Danny has done in terms of producing point guards throughout his career, there's a stretch before he got to Washington of 4 straight all-league first-team point guards that he's been able to produce. And I think that's something that he sees for JJ in his future. And with the way he's able to distribute the ball and just anticipates passes so well, it certainly feels like he's going to be a critical part of this team, most likely coming off the bench. But, it's something where if he's playing 25, 30 minutes a game by the end of the season, I wouldn't be shocked.
Wow. High praise. And, this team's got some depth for sure. So for a freshman to come in and to have the ball a lot, like that means that the guys and the coaching staff has a lot of trust in him. And he seems like the guy who's kind of ready for that. I want to talk about these 2 sophomore Big Ten transfers, Lathan Somerville, the big bruiser from Rutgers, and then Bryson Tucker, wing for Indiana. Those teams had their struggles last year, kind of giving them a little bit of a fresh start, moving out here to Washington. Do you expect them to be nice role players off the bench?
Yeah, absolutely. Lathan is someone who I'm really interested in, where some of the underlying numbers show that he certainly has just another level to reach, where you like him as a backup big. You like what he can bring as a scorer at times, as a rebounder, but he also shot 86% from the free throw line. And it's something where this coaching staff is really excited about him expanding his bag and adding some more just mid and long range shots to his arsenal. And if he can do that, he could be a real weapon coming off the bench. And I think that's where Washington really got exposed more than any other area last season, was after Chris Conway got hurt, was some of the other things that Frank Kepnang obviously going down for an extended period of time as well. With those guys out, that was what really exposed just kind of some of the talent lacks and just some of the other just issues that Washington's roster had last season. And Danny has done a really good job going out there and addressing that. And somebody like Lathan, whether you do need him to make a couple of starts here and there where you want to give Frank a breather, or you do just need him coming off the bench for 15, 20 minutes, whatever it might be, he is a really fun piece in that regard. And Bryson Tucker is someone who, same thing, where there's certainly just another gear to reach, former 5-star McDonald's All-American kind of player. Like, he is someone who I'm really intrigued by. I know he missed some time with a finger injury last season. And if he can just kind of, I think the best way to put it is he's going to be used in a very particular role this season, in my opinion. I think that he has the opportunity to be a 3-and-D kind of guy. And obviously he's explosive enough to slash and get to the hoop and do all these things. I'm just really curious to see what his role might look like. And it's through no fault of his own. It's just, there are so many guys, I don't want to say ahead of him, just around him, that can make an impact, that I'm just curious to see how his role in particular is going to shape up as the year goes along.
A couple other names, Matty Traore coming over as a JUCO guy, 6'11", was pretty productive. And I think he might have been a D1 player and then went to JUCO.
That's right.
Can you tell me about his journey and his expectations off the bench as another big guy here?
Yeah, he's got a little bit of experience. I think it was New Mexico State, is either New Mexico or New Mexico State. I always just kind of get them confused at this point in time with his journey. But he was also at Maryland for a year before dropping down to the JUCO level. And this is someone who this coaching staff prioritized really early on the recruiting trail. And it's the same thing where he just brings depth, and he's a really nice ball handler for his size, and is someone who can stretch the floor a little bit. He can shoot, but it's just, you needed more depth on the interior, and he brings that at a really high level.
I mean, there's so much to like about this roster and the way that these pieces fit. There's just a lot of upside and a lot of different skill sets. Is there a limiting factor that jumps out to you as like the biggest kind of hurdle for this group to overcome? Is it just kind of the chemistry of just kind of meshing these pieces and accepting roles? Is that kind of what stands out to you? Because talent-wise, I feel like this group is like absolutely towards the top of the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it's going to be an accepting roles thing. I think this team has done a really good job of understanding what it's going to take to win together. But I think there are going to be some chemistry things early on of, you're bringing in 10, 11 new players. Like that is going to be a significant hurdle to overcome early in the season. And I think that's my biggest question. And the other thing for me personally is I think this group is as talented as any team in the Big Ten. My question is, what is that going to look like when you have to take some of those long road trips this year, when you get into conference play, and just some of those other things that you don't really know until you actually see it, where outside of, the Michigan State trip last year, which was just a tough watch. Like let's be real. Outside of that, I think this team did a really good job of competing well on the road. This coaching staff made sure that Danny and this entire coaching staff made sure that these guys were ready for some of these challenges. And I think with this increased talent level, if you can get over these long flights and some of these other things, this team is going to compete to be a top 5, top 6 team in this conference.
Non-conference schedule. Do we have any? Tell me about the non-conference schedule. Are there any big non-con opponents?
Yeah, Baylor is the big one. They're also playing Utah here in Seattle a couple weeks after that. Those are the two that I'm really interested in. Then you got the Acrisure Invitational as well. I really like this non-conference schedule for Washington. If they come out of it 8-3, 9-2, I feel like you're going to wind up being really happy with that. And that might be the just the boost that you need going into conference play.
Before I get you out of here, any final thoughts, any predictions, any flag plants of a guy on this team? It seems like you're really high on Mandaquit and Steinbach, but I mean, so anyone else or any other takes?
I got 3 for you. Number 1, Hannes Steinbach is a future lottery pick. Like he is that good, and I'm so excited to watch him continue to develop his game this season. One guy who is an under the radar player that I think everyone should keep an eye on is Cortland Muldrew. He's someone who I wouldn't be surprised if he's part of this rotation as well. Former 4-star recruit who this coaching staff is absolutely enamored with. Danny Sprinkle called him a wild horse who is just so much fun, and he's up to the challenge defensively where he wants to guard Desmond Claude, Wesley Yates. He wants to guard the best player on the other team on every single possession. And offensively, they just think that he can pour it in. I remember there was a point in time where we were doing one of our media availability sessions, and Zoom Diallo walks by with Cortland Muldrew under his arm and is pointing at him saying, this guy right here is a future All-American. So they're very excited about what he brings to the table. Third thing, this is the year Washington gets back to the NCAA tournament. This roster is built to get there, and it's built to win a couple of games once they get there. So if they finish top 5, top 6 in the Big Ten and make that first NCAA tournament appearance since 2019, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Exciting times. This is what the NIL era and the portal can do. Danny Sprinkle can come to Washington, come last place in the Big Ten. All of a sudden you look up and he's got one of the best rosters in the league, and it's pretty exciting. So thank you for coming on here and breaking down the Roman. I'm definitely going to be tuned into this team.
Christian, thanks for having me. This has been great.